Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.
This week at Safeway, shop the 10 for $10 produce sale. With the 10 for $10 produce sale, get items like large avocados, mangoes, green, red, orange, or yellow bell peppers, cucumbers, large lemons, or 16-ounce bags of Signature Farms baby-peeled carrots for the member price of just $1 each. Plus, select meats like Signature Farms 80% lean ground beef and Signature Select extra meaty pork loin back ribs are buy one, get one free this week. Hurry in before these deals are gone. Visit Safeway.com for more deals. Ozcast.
Hello and welcome back to the Nest for another week. We knocked off those Pies. Wasn't that relieving? A wonderful display. Scary at times, Drew Jones, but we got through in the end with some big individual performances, and we're up and going once more, looking ahead to the Cats this week. Hello to you, mate.
Hello, Garby. Yeah, great to get a win under the belt. I really don't like Collingwood. I like covering them as a football team, but I do not like playing against them. Every time we win, it's one of the most satisfying wins I reckon you can have as a West Coast fan. And we've been treated to some awesome games and some great highlights between the two teams. And I really enjoyed this game of football. And I mean, we'll get to the votes and all the positives, but seeing Oscar Allen fly over packs, plucking marks, seeing Jack Darling like legitimately take control of a game was awesome. And then Dom Sheed just with 3 in a row, just to remind Collingwood, back in your box, never forget Dom Sheed. So, yeah, there was a lot to like.
We didn't have the Liam Ryan, Braden Maynard subplot in this one because obviously Flynn wasn't playing. So thankfully Dom Sheed gave us our usual Collingwood subplot, to bury them. That was refreshing. I wanted to talk though about Oscar. I think we should touch on him a little bit more. Not just his game, but it occurred to me on the weekends, he's obviously a special talent and I wouldn't trade him for anyone. I was having this debate with my mates on the weekend. I know Norton's fantastic. I know Max King will be special. I know Harry Mackay is looking pretty good at Carlton, but I ain't trading Oscar for any of them. And I think he'll be just as good. We haven't had at the West Coast Eagles, Drewy, in our history, too many young phenom key forwards come through because there's no player that's more exciting, right, than a key forward that comes through and from the age of 19, 20, you're like bona fide superstar that you can build your franchise around, to use the cliche. It's Peter Sumich, but that was at the beginning of the Eagles when we had a million players coming through. So obviously you only realise how special he is later on. And then Josh Kennedy, of course, but he came via Carlton and it came via a trade, so it was different. Jack Darling's probably the only other one we've had. And he's a little bit different to Oscar because he's not as tall and he was a little bit later in the draft and maybe doesn't present that next captain type player, which Oscar certainly does.
Yep.
So we've actually got this franchise type marketing player to pin the club around, and he's a key forward, and it's just so exciting.
Yeah, he's got the whole package, and that is what probably differentiates himself from previous players that we've had. Jack Darling, he also probably came up to the club under a bit of a cloud in terms of sliding back in the draft, some off-field stuff. He was almost sort of he slotted in too well by doing things really efficiently and effectively. And that's really what Jack has done his entire career. But it's the blonde hair. It's the way that Oscar moves.
Yeah.
Speaks really well. And you're right. He's got that next captain feel. He's got it's not yet an intimidating aura, but he's got something, he's got X factor.
He's got swagger.
Yeah, exactly. And and there's been moments that, I don't know if you remember, we played against Hawthorn on a wet day at the MCG, and I think in the centre of the ground, he took a mark back with the flight. And that was a couple of years ago. He's 19 years old and he's in a critical moment, putting his body on the line, taking a mark like that. That was a moment. The goal against Adelaide, he had the smarts to flick it over the guy in the goal square. He's always, from a very, very young age, he's shown us moments, but now he's really grabbing hold of games. And let's not forget, he's not just been stuck at full forward the entire time. He's over his career, he's accumulated 137 hitouts. He's played defence. He made his debut for the Eagles in defence. So he's got 52 goals in 43 games, but it's more than just that. We're starting to see the rewards in terms of the multiple goals, but he's contributing in many facets, and it's been a delight to watch him develop.
Yeah. So we had David Antonowitz, who was, billed as an ex-Peter Sumich in the 90s, who didn't amount to much. We had Andrew McDougall, who was a number 5 draft pick, who was meant to be like Oscar Allen is now, and he didn't unfortunately match up to it. And then we've had so many workmanlike forwards. Hansen and Mitchell White wasn't workmanlike. He was very skillful, but only had a couple of big seasons up forward. Langdon was workmanlike. Lynch was workmanlike. Now we've got, the full package, and it's just so exciting. And, you can have your Nortons and Kings. They're brilliant, no doubt. But watching that chase and tackle from Oscar early, how many of the key forwards can do
Chris
that?
Main.
That sets the tone for the game. And Norton probably can do it, but Allen's proven it time and time again. And then that moment when he goes back, I think in the second quarter, and he puts the big punch on defensively and spoils it, another crowd-lifting moment. So he does it all, and it's just fantastic at the moment. So I thought it was worthy of touching on just what he means to Eagles fans right now. The midfield lifted, Drewy. That was the good thing. Redden and Duggan stood up, which is something we've been crying out for over the first month of the season.
Yeah, so Jack Redden, that's his career best, 37 disposals. We've said over the last few weeks, we don't think that Redden's got a lot of tricks. He was bouncy, energetic, skills were really clean and crisp. God, he got a lot to a lot of contests. That's exactly what we expect and hope for, all the time from Jack Redden. And that was a really good performance by him. He was so busy, exactly what was required, and he did it the whole game. Duggan was good. He spent a little bit of time down back, which is why he padded his stats with lots of marks and kicks. But he's doing a job for us as always. Jackson Nelson ran through a little bit as well. And then Dom Sheed, when the whips were cracking around the ball, he was good, and then he kicks goals for us late. Yep. Andrew Gaff is interesting now, and just on Tim Kelly, he battled through the Levi Greenwood tag and actually sort of fought him off a little bit.
Yep.
If anything, he was better early, and then probably as the game went on, once Greenwood was off him, he didn't have as much influence. But
he went forward a little bit early, which I liked. So he broke the tag by getting forward, and Greenwood couldn't go with him. So Greenwood had moments of the game when he got on top of him. That's going to happen with the tag. But compare it to the final where he couldn't get near it, much improved, but in line with his improved season.
And Nick Nat laid him out. So Greenwood was forced to pay a little bit, and we saw a couple of Eagles players going over to bump him. I can't remember who it was, but certainly early when he was trailing Kelly, a couple of guys went over and exerted some physical pressure on him. So that was good. And you messaged me during the game about Andrew Gaff. So he played on ball a lot more. It was a very different type of game from Gaff, wasn't it? But he ends up with 38 possessions, and certainly he had an influence on the game.
He still didn't look 100% right to me. He still didn't look 100%. I know he worked his way through the game late and he looked better in the second half, but there was a moment, I can't remember exactly who the Collingwood players were, when he was chasing and again he looked slow. And I think that's when I messaged you and said, if we're going to play him, he has to play on ball. Like, put him in and under, because he's getting caught for pace out wide and it's hurting us. Second half, when we got on top, he got a bit more of it and he contributed and he looked good and that was fine and his stats were right up there. But I'm still not convinced he's 100%, but it was certainly an improved display.
Yeah, he's in an interesting spot right now, Andrew Gaff. It was interesting watching him on the ball and around the contest a lot more because, as we know, he's not really built for that, is he? But he seemed to be reading taps and he was getting contested ball, but ultimately a lot of the time he was kicking under extreme pressure or while being tackled. So none of his clearances were really that clean, were they? So he certainly played a role as an extra number as an on-baller. It's a question of whether really that's what we need him for. Probably not. But Brander's playing well on the wing, so that's giving us a bit of it's giving us a real out, with Gaff.
It's just awesome seeing Brander play like this. This is the player we recruited. All of a sudden, that draft that we speak about, why didn't we take Oscar Allen with pick 13? Because then we wouldn't have had to sell the farm for Kelly. Well, now we're seeing what Brander can do. It's great watching his confidence and his ability to move into different positions makes him so hard to man up on. So, yeah, he's doing ever so well at the moment. We finally saw Alex Witherden, and he was fantastic. I'm not sure teams will give him that much space moving forward because it was his first game, but my goodness, we saw exactly what he's all about, and that is kicking efficiency of the highest order. He did not miss a target all night, and not only did he keep hitting targets, but there were a fair few of them that were dangerous kicks, attacking kicks that then get you going. They weren't just safe passes. So he was fantastic in his debut. Exactly
what we wanted to see from him. He had 30 disposals. Garby, 28 of those were effective possessions. So, yeah, you can't really sum it up any better than that. He did exactly what he wanted, and those 45 kicks that he was hitting were really good. It meant that we didn't miss Hearn as much as we would normally have. He leaves a massive hole in the side, no doubt about that, with leadership and various things. But Witherden was able to fill a gap as far as using the ball. And, Josh Rotham continues to really elevate his game to the point where it's like, we've got that many halfbacks. It's ridiculous. And how do we fit them all in? Like, we've got to find a way.
So who goes out when Hearn comes back next week? He's not going to play against Collingwood. They've said he's more unlikely than likely. So it would take a dramatic turn of events for him to play. Who goes out, all things being equal, this week? Let's say they all put in decent enough performances. Who do you leave out of that halfback line next week in the derby? Or derby, sorry.
Great question. I reshuffle. I play Cole more midfield time, or Nelson, or Duggan, or something. But I'll reshuffle. Witherden stays in for me.
Jackson Nelson in trouble?
Possibly, because he's a role player. Again, that hurts him.
Yeah,
he's too flexible. He's not nailed down in one position. And I love Jackson Nelson as a guy to have on your team, but maybe he might be the guy that gets squeezed out.
Yeah, maybe you do leave an O'Neill out or something like that while, we're obviously down Luke Shuey and Yo and Liam Ryan's gone out as well. But then, Petruccelli comes back too, and he has to come straight back into the team based on his form. So it's going to be a couple of unlucky soldiers in there. It's going to be tough for Simo to make that call. Rotham's form's good enough. Tommy Cole's form's good enough. Maybe it is Jackson Nelson. It would be so harsh on him, but he's also playing a bit of a lockdown role. So whoever it is, it's going to be pretty undeserving, you would think, but a lot can change in a week. Tough game, Academia Park, which we'll get into, against the Cats. And if someone's down this week, well, then you're out. If you're one of those players in the mix, you'll miss out of the derby. So that's motivation for them to put in a big display, and they'll all be aware of that. So that's pretty exciting. Do you want to get into the votes, Drewy, or do you have a couple of questions to pose first?
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions for you.
Okay. I've got one for you as well.
Okay, well, I'll start. A question without notice for you. If Jeremy Howe and Jordan De Goey don't get injured, is it a lot closer on Friday night?
Yeah, it'd be a lot closer. We were in a bit of trouble when they were still on the field. I'd have backed us to get through because I think we had enough quality, but it would have been scary. Yeah, for sure.
And my second question to you is, in the second and third quarter, when we pulled away from Collingwood and we were starting to really put them to the sword, as tends to happen with West Coast, and I don't know why this is, we don't absolutely spifflicate teams when they're there for the taking.
Yeah.
A, does it concern you? And B, do you have any inkling as to why that would be? Because it's always frustrated me.
Yeah, a number of supporters have mentioned this, and we allowed Port to get back, not back into the game, but reduce the margin. And we allowed Collingwood to give us some moments of fear for a minute or two late in the fourth quarter, and then that dissipated. We were never really in trouble, but if they kicked the next one out of the centre, then it would have been a little bit hairy. So, yeah, fair questions. I'm not sure. Is there a lack of ruthlessness? Maybe. Is there a lack of a real killer edge to the team, potentially? Are they just not clicking 100%? Josh Kennedy said this week, we're not playing four quarters the way we would like. Maybe that's just coincidental with the fourth quarter and they're just not quite clicking at the end of the games. For me, it's usually a mental thing when that happens, and they're just not quite possessing that ruthlessness at the moment, which is something that can be worked on. Teams can flick that switch pretty quickly. So hopefully they can rectify it when the opportunity occurs. But they've also Port's a good team. They're going to work their way back into a game. But Collingwood were there for the taking. We could have really buried them and we didn't. So I'd imagine that's something that addressed. I would say it's just mental. What would you think?
Yeah, I think it has to be mental. I just wonder why. I mean, are they playing 2% more or less intense to try and save energy, or because they feel they don't need to? But why? Why bother?
I think we are. It's
not helping us down the line.
No, I think we are a team that can become a little bit happy with ourselves from time to time. I think we've seen that since the premiership. I think we saw it in 2019, that loss to Hawthorn. I think we saw it at the start of last year in the Hub. Maybe it's just a remnant of that. Sometimes we get a little bit happy with ourselves and they're up and they're cruising. We've seen it sometimes on the road, the second half against St Kilda. They just think sometimes, and we saw it in the documentary, Simo saying to them a few times, you're big heads, you're playing on talent. Every now and again, that just creeps in a little bit. We've been really good this season. We've had one bad half all season, and then we've let teams back into it late to alter percentage. But sometimes I think they just get a little bit too happy with themselves. What would you say to that?
Do we lack I'm trying to think of a good example here. Do we lack someone with a Michael Voss, Jonathan Brown, Nick Riewoldt kind of ruthless leadership streak? Like Nick Riewoldt, there were people within St Kilda who did not like him because he was so ruthless. He was so detail orientated. Nick Riewoldt was an amazing player, but he also had an amazing work rate and attention to detail that just not everyone can keep up with. But when you have someone setting that standard at a football club, even if there's people who don't like it, they will probably respect it and they'll try to match that. So there was no Shannon Hearn, no Luke Shuey out in the grounds. Like, does that make a difference? Like, are our senior players like a Josh Kennedy? He doesn't appear to be someone who grabs people by the jumper and says, "Get freaking stuck in here and bury them."
Sam Mitchell disliked as well, which is why we brought him over, because he's someone who doesn't care about how much he's liked. He just wants to get the right mentality through his teammates, and that means sometimes he's not their best mate. You want your teammates, you want your team to be good friends, because then you do play for each other. But sometimes you can be too close. You have to get that perfect balance of we're all mates, but we're happy to give it to each other as well when things aren't going well. I'm not sure that this group is the kind that necessarily gives it to each other. They're all really tight. They love each other. They play for each other. That's the most important thing. But every now and again, you have to be willing to lay the law down to one another. I'm not sure that they do that enough, which is maybe where some of the ruthlessness can fade away. But it can be worked on.
You know what? I can live with that. If that is the case, I can live with it.
Yeah, I would say that would probably be from the outside. An analysis. I think Nick Nananui has the potential to be that kind of guy. And I think he's starting to grow a bit in that regard. I'd like to see him get stuck into a couple and lay the law down a little bit. When we're up by 4 goals at 3/4 time, having a go at someone for, falling asleep in a passage of play or something like that. We don't really see that with the team. It's a pretty good point you make. I've got one question for you, unannounced, Drewy. Mm-hmm. If we were to drop Nathan Vardy and keep Oscar Allen forward and not pick Bailey Williams, who is the Marlon Pickett-style midfielder you would choose to be the Eagles' second ruck? And you can't say Jared Brander because he's the tallest of them. So he's the obvious one. So let's say Brander's unavailable.
I was going to say Brander. So
of course you would, but you can't say Brander. Let's pretend he's not there.
I'll go Waterman.
Okay. All right. Fair enough.
What about you? What would you do?
Well, I think that the point of the question is someone who's not even a key position player. So Marlon Pickett's a midfielder, and so they don't want to move someone out of a key position. Waterman could probably do it. Probably Jack Redden. Like, he'd probably get monstered, but, centre bounces is not even worth trying. But then boundary throw-ins, maybe he can, muscle up a body or something like that and make a contest and jump up a little bit and try and spoil or then shark it. I'm thinking maybe Jack Redden if you're not actually picking the Brander, Waterman type big style player. But that's something that Adam Simpson was asked himself by the Eagles during the week, because it could be something for him to pose. You don't want to move Oscar Allen out of the forward line at the moment, but Nathan Vardy's not really giving us much outside of a ruck contest. So it's certainly one to consider. Let's get into the votes for this week, mate. The 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I gave mine on Twitter, so why don't you give us your 5 to 1?
I just loved Jack Redden's game. And while a midfielder getting 37 possessions isn't necessarily a huge deal in this day and age, I just thought he was our heartbeat on Friday night. And after our midfield had failed so badly against St Kilda in the second half, I thought it was important that someone did that. So he gets the 5, although Oscar Allen kicking 5 goals and the way that he did it was just so impressive. So he gets 4. Darling grabbing hold of the game. You know, when the game was on the line in the second quarter, kicking 4 goals in that second term, you know, that's what we love to see from him. He gets 3, 2 for Sheed and 1 for Nick, who I thought he really curtailed Grundy and was also able to service the midfielders. So, you know, Grundy didn't get hold of us at any phase in the game, and I think Nick was important to that, a part of that. So that's why I give him the 1 vote.
Nice. So my 5 to 1 for those who didn't catch them on Twitter, Oscar Allen with the 5, just, you know, all 4 quarters supreme. Darling the 4 for the same reason, you know, put us in front when it was required. Sheed the 3 for winning us the game in that third quarter. Those 3 goals instrumental. I gave Duggan the 2 for his all-round game, and I gave Redden the 1 for his all-round game, and for both of them for standing up when we needed it in the midfield. Of course, due to our absences in there. Witherden unlucky, Gov unlucky as well. So we've compiled all of your votes. Thanks so much again for them on Twitter. And they came through aggregate-wise as Oscar Allen 45, Redden 33, Darling 23, Sheed 20, and Duggan 11, which means Oscar gets the 5. Jack Redden got 4 for this week. Jack Darling 3, Dom Sheed 2, and Liam Duggan 1. So we have a fresh leaderboard, Drewy, all the way through for the Nest medal. And we have a new leader, ladies and gentlemen. Oscar Allen out on 10 votes, the leader of the Nest medal after 5 rounds. Tommy Barras on 9. Nick Natanui 8. Tim Kelly 7. 3 on 5, that's Dom Sheed, Jack Petrocelli for his game against the Saints, Luke Shuey for his 1 game this season, all on 5. Brad Shepherd and Jack Redden on 4. McGovern, Gaff, Darling and Hearn all on 3. And Liam Duggan with the 1.
Okay, Oscar.
Oscar in front.
Makes my pre-season headline about Oscar seem even better. What was it? I can't remember.
Winning the best and fairest or something like that, or being right up?
No, I don't know. I just said he was going to. It wasn't about the future. It was now or something.
Yeah, well, it is now for him. He's a sensation. Right. Speaking of the now, doesn't get any tougher, even if they're down a little bit, Drewy, than the Cats at Gardenia Park. It's the one game you look at on paper and you just go, oh no, it's probably going to be cold. It's probably going to be windy. The fans are going to be raucous. They're a good team. You just don't look forward to it. Apart from being able to sit down and watch the Eagles play, that's about as far as it gets in terms of excitement and optimism, right? Because you just know it is going to be tough. We haven't won there since 2006.
I just hate this fixture so much.
Everyone does.
I seriously hate it. I used to go to it when I first moved over, and like we almost play them there every year, right? It just always happens. And I would always go down with this optimism, and we would get absolutely destroyed. And I'm like, why did I waste my time catching the train down here? Like a round trip on the train is at least an hour and a half.
Yeah.
In the car, yes, you can do it an hour and 10. And then you got to endure the drive home or on the train. It's just the worst. And the ground is just crap. There's holes in the stands where wind gets through. The ground is so thin, and yet players just never get their heads around the fact that if you kick it down the line, you have to kick it like 10 metres further in than you normally would. And the Geelong fans are putrid. Like it just sucks. It's terrible.
So like teams probably feel that way when it comes to watching the Eagles in the West, but at least you're watching them in a beautiful stadium. You know that the weather's not going to affect it too much unless it's pouring down. Like if your team's playing well, at least they'll be able to manage the environment and all those sorts of things, the condition. But you know, when it comes to playing the Cats, it's going to be cold and windy and all those things are going to affect the standard of the game. And it's tough enough as it is that it's just really hard to get excited about it.
Yeah, I'm just looking at our record. We beat them a lot at Gardenia Park early days, And we had a great record against Geelong through the late 80s, early 90s. And let's face it, in the most important games that West Coast and Geelong have ever played, we get the chocolates.
Yeah.
Don't worry about semi-finals and games at Cardinia Park, 5 degrees in round 6. When it comes to grand finals, we get the job done against the Cats. But our record there since about the year 2000 is 1 win from about 10 or 11 games. There was a pretty weird draw in there at one stage. I think Michael Braun hit the post at the very end. And then obviously a great win in 2006 in what was a pretty memorable year for us. We put the question out to the Ness family about their memories from that day. Can you remember watching that game, where you were, how you felt?
I remember it distinctly because I was actually working at 6PR and I was getting ready to produce the show that came on just after the Cats game. So I was watching with, I think, Peter Vlahos and Kim Hagdorn at 6PR, getting ready for the show, watching the Eagles game, which was obviously the main part of our discussion that day, and enjoying the comeback. And I'll never forget a comment from Kim Hagdorn as the Eagles won the game. He said, Embley's their best player. Embley's their best player. He said, we always say the same stuff every week. Andrew Embley's their best player. And I don't think he would have said that in the cold light of day because, Judd was the best player or Cousins or Kerr would have had fair claims or Dean Cox, but he was just hammering home how influential Andrew Embley was and how many times he'd done that for the Eagles and how he was a bit of an afterthought because of all those big stars. So that's something that stood out for me. Andrew Embley in a big game yet again, like he did so many times, contributing on that day and then listening to the Eagles calls. I'm sure some of you, may have been part of that on the Nest, listening to your calls of adulation and celebration for one of the great wins in Eagles history.
God, it was good, wasn't it? And the 5-minute warning on Channel 10, that just makes it. Quartermain and maybe Michael Christian calling the game was a bloody cracker. Lots of people have got back to us about, watching that game. I like Austin here, who was at the game. He said, I was 15. I was there at Cardinia Park. Tough to pick a favourite moment. But Hunter being put into the dugout by Cam Mooney and then coming back out with the bandaged head to kick the winner, that is definitely a memorable moment because I think Hunter had a pretty dirty day and Mooney had given him a real touch-up. I reckon Mooney even gets suspended out of that incident. But for Hunter, who was probably half concussed, to come on and kick the winners, a great effort. And then Embley from Embley from the centre square. That's one of my favourite Eagles goals, I reckon. That really long bomb and then his celebration and all the players running to him. At that moment, you were like, this is our game. Like, we're going to win this. Have you got one for us?
Ricky Power. I turned it off and missed the comeback. Don't think I've tuned out early since. Appreciate the honesty, which is great. This from LC's a beauty. I was on Kentucky 06. My cousin called me, said we'd basically lost. I got so drunk I was crying. He called me to tell me we'd won. I legit woke up 2 days later. Worst hangover ever.
He's pulled a Ben Cousins.
Absolutely fantastic.
Now, I think a lot of people could relate to watching this game and probably at least one person in their household leaving. So I was watching at my dad's place and he has a short fuse when it comes to West Coast, not in terms of getting angry, but he'll certainly bail out quickly if he feels like it's a lost cause. And what we'd seen a fair share of floggings at that ground, even at that stage. So Dad went out into the garden and I just must have just sat there, Garby, and just kept watching because I wouldn't have been on my phone, right? We didn't have our phones to be on at that stage. So I would have just sat there and just watched. And I remember we got a couple of goals and I was like, God, it's still like 40 points. Like we're way off here. And just kept going and going. And
and from Kevin Seaborn, Hunter's goal to put us in the lead. So that was the Woosher move. When we were struggling, just chuck Hunter forward. He didn't have too many other moves, Woosher. Like by his own admission, he's not a tactical genius. Like he was a leader of men. He set the team up and they'd run through a brick wall from him. But he wasn't the trickiest coach in that regard. Suma did a lot of that stuff. But his one move was Hunter forward. That's basically what we had. And it seemed to work pretty much every time. It did on that occasion.
Darren Jones says, Daniel Kerr running the length of the ground just on guts in the last quarter to receive a mark deep in the forward pocket. I can vaguely remember Kerr just looking completely cooked, as did tend to happen because he used to run his guts out a lot. See, Stephen Quartermain's got chucked a like in here somewhere about
Nice.
Call. Oh, yeah, Shane Saxon says, I actually love Quartermain's call of the game. He captured Andrew Embley's goal so well, especially his kick from 55 early in the last. Yeah, it was memorable, that's for sure. Embley was superb that day.
How about this from Alex Paul? Watched it at home with my Geelong mad dad and brother. How good would that be? They got stuck right into me, so I left at halftime to watch at my mate's place around the corner with his Geelong mad mum. She started chirping two until late in the third. Strolled back in to find dad and bro had bailed. Brilliant, Alex. It's one we can dine out on.
Absolutely. So we haven't won there since then. So it's been 15 years. I would have to say this is our best chance.
Yeah, we're
almost since then. So a few things to consider here. Geelong are not at their best, and they know it. Everyone knows it. Watch Geelong play. It is hard to watch.
Yeah,
they may be able to shut us down though. Defensively, they've been almost the best team of the last 4-5 years, and you realise when you watch teams play against Geelong, God, they're hard to score against.
Yeah.
And they move the ball so slowly.
Yeah.
And down the line, and like West Coast do a bit of that, the down the line dump kick, get it out of bounds, get it contested. But we do it better. But yeah, so it's fascinating to see how this shakes down.
Yeah.
The less space in the ground, does that not suit our kicking game as much? Whether we can match their contested pressure around the ball. Jeremy Cameron comes in, which is going to be interesting. I wish it had been a week later because he is a good player. Just gives us one more guy to look after. And I don't know if you've seen this today, Garby, but apparently Patrick Dangerfield may have to have ankle surgery after what happened to him last week against North Melbourne. So that's going to be interesting to see whether Danger plays. But they're gettable.
Yeah. They are gettable. That is the point. We're a decent chance. Now, why are we a decent chance? A, their confidence is down. They haven't clicked yet, but they're a good enough team that they can turn it on. So hopefully it's not this week. Our forward line is so good that we can win any game, even against a formidable Geelong defence. So you go, all right, yeah, they're excellent. But if our boys are on again and clicking, even without Flying in the team, we're a good chance to contribute a lot in that regard. Their midfield isn't great. So yes, we're missing key players there, but with Danger out, their midfield can be a little bit pedestrian. I mean, Joel Selwood's still a quality player, but he's not quick. Cam Guthrie accumulates. He doesn't necessarily really burn you, though. And then it starts to fade away a little bit. Like Menegola played well last week. He can hurt you a bit. They haven't really got that. There are a couple dynamic midfielders short without Danger. So we could potentially match them there if the likes of Redden and Duggan are on their game, and Kelly's at it, and Gaffey's feeling good. We can match him in that regard, and especially with Nick Nat and the ruck. And then, yes, Jeremy Cameron, it's not great that he's back this week, but it's also a big ask for him to come in and excel straight away, because it's a different dynamic for him now. Like, he's used to being the main man, and he almost has to play second fiddle to Hawkins, or they need to find some chemistry. And he hasn't played a game all season. It's going to be tough for that to work. I mean, maybe it does. They're good enough to work it out pretty quickly. But against our defence, where to run? Do I leave space for Tom? He doesn't want to step on Tom Hawkins' toes too early as well. Now, he's the king of Geelong. He doesn't want to. He'll be happy to play second fiddle for a while. But how does he do that? Just maybe we can catch them on the cold this week. But I'm not going to tip us because it's Cardinia Park and it's just very difficult to win there. And I'm not sure we're at a level right now where we can do it, especially with the players we have out. We also have a number of players out, but we're a decent chance.
Yeah, law of averages says Geelong have won 70 of their last 80 games at Cardinia Park. So they don't lose there often, and it's traditionally been a tough game for West Coast. But we're getting Geelong at a good time. 2 weeks ago would have been even better, but this is still the time to do it. And unfortunately, they're probably also getting us at not a bad time considering our injuries.
Yeah.
Hearn's not going to play, as you mentioned. Ryan's still going to be a while away. Yo and Shuey, you start mentioning these names and you start feeling pessimistic. But, they did do the job last week, and they've got to stop us. Like, our forward line right now is functioning pretty well. And, you know, Lockie Henderson's getting on a little bit, and Jake Colajasny isn't an absolute superstar, and neither is Jack Henry. So there are, you know, their backline isn't absolutely star-studded with guns. So if we can get hold of them there, that's going to be a big tick for us.
Josh Kennedy might be rested, which will be interesting. Adam Simpson said that today, that he's got a bit of a knock. I think if it was a game in Perth, a big game in Perth, he would play, but they might just err on the side of caution and not take him over and allow him to rest up a little bit, a bit of management. You know, we've still got a good enough forward line to trouble them with Oscar and Darling, of course, and Waterman's looking all right, but that could be a bit of a blow to us. It's going to be very difficult, and it's the kind of game that they could rise in because they know how much of a challenge we are, and they know they need to get their form together now, and Cameron back might give them a bit of a lift, and so on and so forth. So tough game. I'm not tipping us. I think Geelong will win, but we are a decent chance, and it would be a massive win if we can pull it off, because the Derby the week after, the draw opens up a little bit. Wow, what a victory it would be. Just watch all the adulation flowing for the Eagles if we can execute this one.
Yeah, getting an away win would be really good, considering we've lost a couple of games in Victoria so far this season. Get that one away, get ahead of the ledger going into a Derby. And I'm pretty excited for Derby week, Garby. I'm going to be in Perth covering my first ever Derby, working out of the Perth office, get to see family and friends as well, which is nice, but we'll have someone in Perth for the Derby build-up. So that's nice for us. I guess I'm lining up a few chats with some ex-Eagles players. So hopefully it's gonna be the best Derby coverage I reckon Fox Sports News has had in about 10 years since Tanya Armstrong was going around.
Fantastic,
so,
mate. Enjoy that. That's for sure.
Yeah.
We'll focus on the Derby next week. It's the Cats this week, but it's going to be a rip around. We're going to save Shannon Hearn now to break the Eagles record leading into the Derby. So how good's that going to be? Unless he plays this week, which I can't see happening. So talk about a big fillip for the Eagles going into that one. But hopefully we can beat the Cats first. Been a good episode, mate. Thanks for jumping on, as we always do. Thanks to everyone for listening. Thanks for all your feedback. Give us feedback on the show. You're great with the votes. You're great after games and all that. But let us know what you think of the show. If you disagree with us, hey, point it out. Let's have a chat about it. Anything else you think we missed, point it out, and let's have some dialogue. We enjoy it. It's about something we love, and that's the West Coast Eagles. And let's hope that our boys can get up for us on Saturday afternoon. That would be fantastic. We know it's a tough one though, and we'll support them regardless. That is for sure.
Garby, thank you. Let's get it done against the Cats. Have a great week, everyone. Thanks for listening.
This week at Safeway, shop the 10 for $10 produce sale. With the 10 for $10 produce sale, get items like large avocados, mangoes, green, red, orange, or yellow bell peppers, cucumbers, large lemons, or 16-ounce bags of Signature Farms baby peeled carrots for the member price of just $1 each. Plus, select meats like Signature Farms 80% lean ground beef and Signature Select extra meaty pork loin back ribs are buy one, get one free this week. Hurry in before these deals are gone. Visit Safeway.com for more deals.
Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to AuscastNetwork.com for details.